Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the EOB podcast. So last weekend we have the release of three movies. One is Bohemian Rhapsody, the Queen biopic, and then we have the Nutcracker and the Four Realms, the new Disney live-action fairy tale, and then the comedy Nobody's Fool. Let's see how those movies did at the box office. Okay, let's jump right in. Coming in at number one is Bohemian Rhapsody, the movie that's a biopic on the band Queen, and the title is based on the song title of the same name. It was featured in Wayne's World at one point. The movie took in an estimated 50 million in its opening frame, which is way higher than what I project the movie to open to. I said the movie could probably open somewhere between 10 to 15 million. I mean, way off there, right? Because I said Queen's the band, its heyday has come and gone. I thought people might not be that interested in a Queen biopic, especially the younger folks. So that's why my estimates were low. The opening for the movie, right, were low. But lo and behold, right, it has an A cinema score. So people who saw it, probably fans of the band, liked it. Review wise, it's 59% on Rotten Tomatoes, just barely missing the mark on sort of fresh rating, right? But again, the opening is huge, 50 million for a Queen's biopic. The budget is about, reportedly 52 million. The movie is directed by Bryan Singer, who I thought would influence the box office somewhat because he has this off-screen controversy, him being rumored to molest or take advantage of underage actors. I thought that cloud might influence the box office tick somewhat, but I guess it didn't. Okay, coming in at number two is The Nutcracker and the Four Realms, a movie I thought could open somewhere between 30 to 35 million, but it only managed to put in a reported 20 million, estimated 20 million. Probably like with Bohemian Rhapsody, when the actual comes in, the number could be lower. Right, but probably not by much. But 20 million is kind of like 10 million less than my lowest projection, right? I thought this movie could do well. Could open up to 30 to 35 million. Even though Nutcracker and the Four Realms, the Nutcracker, the story is kind of like a smaller movie. It's not one of their, it's not one of Disney's staple with with the princess movies. It's kind of like with Puff the Magic Dragon, Pete's Dragon, right, and a couple others. So that's why my estimates were low, and it still failed to kind of live up to my low estimates. You can't fault the cast, right? Morgan Freeman's in here. Mackenzie Foyle stars. In the lead, Keira Knightley is here. Helen Mirren, directed by Les Hallstrom and Joe Johnston. It's good looking, but unfortunately it didn't open that well. So it depends. Its future success depends on if this movie has legs. And judging by the reviews, right, 35% on Rotten Tomatoes, I'm not sure if this movie will have that much legs, right? And a B+ cinema score. So critics didn't like it. Audience score thought it was, okay, passable, but not something great, not something that Disney usually churns out. So we don't know what the future prospect of this movie will be. I mean, even though it opened low, right? That's not a death sentence for a movie. It could, get its accumulate box office over time. But does this movie have time to accumulate that box office? Because the reviews critically, it's not good. Audience score is not that great. So we'll see come second weekend to see where this movie stands. All right, let's move on to number three, which is the comedy Nobody's Fool, starring Tiffany Haddish, who recently had a movie with Kevin Hart. A Night School, you might have heard. Also starring Tika Sumter, Whoopi Goldberg's in here. It's a Tyler Perry movie who wrote and directed this movie. I said it looks funny. It has a female cast. I thought it could open to 15 to 20 million, and it just hit almost right at the lower end of my projection. It pulled in a estimated 14 million over the weekend. Which is, I guess, decent for a movie that's headlined by Tiffany Haddish, whose star is on the rise, right? But unfortunately, the reviews weren't good. 25% on Rotten Tomatoes. Critics didn't like it much, but an A- cinema score. So I guess there is, like I said, movies that's targeted toward the African American audience are usually front loaded. And I said that if it went beyond that targeted demographic, it could open higher, but it seems like it kind of just captured the demographic that it targeted. Like I said, we'll see if this movie will have legs, like with her collaboration with Kevin Hart, Night School, if it follows the same trajectory, or if it will fall off fast come the second weekend. Keep an eye out. All right, number 4 is A Star Is Born. This movie just keep on going and going. Has great hold. Felt about 21% drop off from the previous weekend to pull in 11.1 million in its 5th weekend. Domestic gross right now is 165 million. This movie didn't cost that much, only 36 million, and overseas it pulled in an additional 129 million for a worldwide total of 295 million. So it's closing in on the 300 million barrier. So hey, this is kind of like one of the surprise hit in the fall. All right, let's move on to number 5, Halloween, the horror movie with Jamie Lee Curtis. Like I said, the 11th Halloween movie, and it is the biggest movie in the franchise. It pulled in about 11 million in its 3rd weekend. Drop off is quite high, almost 65%. Domestic gross right now is 150 million, but hey, who cares, right? It opened high. It opened to 76 million. Right now, domestic gross is 150 million. Overseas, it pulled in an additional 80 million for a worldwide total of 229 million, and the budget's only 10 million. Moving along to number 6, the movie Venom. It pulled in about 7.9 million in its 5th weekend. Drop off is kind of low, 26%. Domestic gross is 198 million, and worldwide it is 541 million, 342 of that from overseas. So yay, I mean, you pencil in the sequel right now. All right. Number 8 is Smallfoot. It pulled in 3.8 million in the 6th weekend. Drop off is about 20%. Hey, low drop off for these movies. Domestic gross is 77 million, so it's closing in on the 80 million barrier. It gained an additional 116 million from overseas for a worldwide total of 193 million. The budget is supposedly 80 million, so it's doing well. Okay, number 8 is Goosebumps 2 Haunted Halloween. It pulled in 3.7 million in its 4th weekend, about 50% drop off from the previous weekend. Domestic gross is 43 million. The budget is 35 million. Overseas, it's not doing that well either, right? With 38 million from overseas for a worldwide total of 82 million. So I guess, with the worldwide total, it's considered a small hit, but I'm not sure if we're going to see Goosebumps 3 unless Sony wants to make more movies so they can keep the rights for the Goosebumps series. So who knows? Okay, number 9 is Hunter Killer. It pulled in 3.5 million in the 2nd weekend. Drop off is about 47%. Domestic gross is 12 million so far. Remember, this is a thriller, submarine thriller starring Gerard Butler with Gary Oldman, Common, and others, right? It opened to about 6.6 million, but in the 2nd weekend it only managed to gross around 13 million or so, right? This is a movie that I said could probably open to 25 million because hey, it looks action packed, it looks tense. Hey, who didn't like a submarine movie, right? But I guess this movie is not it. I mean, reviews wise, it's not good, 36% Rotten Tomatoes, but hey, it has an A- cinema score, so it has this disconnect there where I thought, critics might not like it, audience liked it, but for some reason, I guess they didn't want to see a submarine movie at this time. The budget is 40 million, so it doesn't look like it'll lose much money when it's said and done. But then again, it's not off to a good start. I don't think this movie will not break the 30 million barrier domestically, and it hasn't opened that wide overseas yet. So but I heard that Gerard Butler is gold overseas, so this movie still has a chance, to capture, to not bomb overseas, basically. All right, closing out the top 10 is The Hate You Give. It pulled in 3.4 million in its fifth weekend. Drop off is about 33%. Domestic gross is about 23 million. And overseas, it hasn't opened that wide yet, but I don't expect this movie to be that big overseas. Overseas, it only pulled in about 2 million for a worldwide total of 25 million. Okay, so that's it for the top 10. Let's move on to the new releases this weekend. Like last week, we're gonna have 3. We're gonna have Overlord, a movie that took place in World War II with Nazis, zombie Nazis. And then we have The Girl in the Spider's Web, which is based on one of the books in the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo series. And finally, we have Dr. Seuss's The Grinch, which is an animated take of Dr. Seuss's classic tale. Let's start off with Overlord. Overlord is, like I said, it takes place during World War II, about a group of soldiers that's parachuted on D-Day, right, in England or whatever, right? They discover this place that has some Nazi experiments, and there's this serum. If you watch the trailer, right, once injected into the subjects, they turn into powerful zombies, what have you, right? Sounds like a plot from a video game, and you might not be wrong, right? It's produced by J.J. Abrams. It's directed by Julius Avery, who did Son of a Gun, with Ewan McGregor, and he is attached to direct the forthcoming Flash Gordon movie, right? It stars Jovian Adepo, Watt Russell. I don't know who these people are exactly, right? So it's kind of like action horror movie, and like I said, produced by J.J. Abrams. It's surprisingly well reviewed right now on Rotten Tomatoes, 91%. Again, I don't know how well this movie will go with the audience, because it is sort of like a horror movie, kind of like a B horror movie, right? It stars nobody you heard of. But there's some action, right? There's gunfires, explosions, zombies. Hey, you couldn't go wrong with zombies, right? And a 91% on Rotten Tomatoes. Initially, I had my opening figures lower because hey, it's another horror movie, right? But then again, I took a look at the reviews and say 91%, and J.J. Abrams is involved, so there might be some semblance of quality here, right? So I upped my projections. Initially, I had this movie opening somewhere like 10 million or so, right? But I'm upping it to maybe 15 to 20 million for this movie, Overlord. Let's see if I'm right. All right, let's move on to Girl in the Spider's Web. It's directed by Fede Alvarez, who directed the 2013's Evil Dead movie and the horror movie Don't Breathe. So he has the the horror movie cred there. And starring Claire Foy, Sylvie Hokes, other Scandinavian actors, I think. So this is based on one of the book in the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo series, right? I don't think it's either the fourth or the fifth one. Okay, back in 2011, Daniel Craig and Rooney Mara uh, did the remake of the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. That one opened to 13 million. Went on to make 102 million domestically and 232 million worldwide. And Sony didn't go forward with the sequel because the response was tepid. Even though it made 102 million domestically and 232 million worldwide, that wasn't good enough for Sony to greenlit a sequel, right? They're supposed to do like a trilogy, 3 movies, but they didn't, with David Fisher directing. And they waited a long time since then, and they kind of jumped a couple of books to this one, The Girl in the Spider's Web, and with a new actress. Rooney Mara was the actress in the original movies, right? Counting her Scandinavian movies, right? But Claire Foy took over this role. I'm not sure the time away from that 2011 movie will help this movie much, right? Because Claire Foy is not that big of a name. Remember the 2011 movie had Daniel Craig, who at that time was James Bond, and Rooney Mara. She made the great lead, right? So I think this movie, like I said, I think the time away didn't help this movie much. The awareness for this movie isn't that great, and I'm not sure if there's any interest in this type of movie, right? So I think this movie could probably open somewhere around where that 2011 movie opened to, maybe a bit even lower, right? So I'm thinking 10 million opening for Girl in the Spider's Web. All right, let's move on to Dr. Seuss's The Grinch 2018, which is the animated, I don't know, remake, you could say, or adaptation of Dr. Seuss's book, right, of the same name, The Grinch. There was a movie back in, I think, 2000 with Jim Carrey, him getting makeup in is a live action, right? That one did really well. It opened to 55 million, 260 million domestic, and 345 million worldwide. Except this one is animated. I'm sure, it's also by Universal, right? That movie and this one, except that this one is by their animation branch, Illumination, who did the Minion movies and the I don't know what's that movie? That's kind of like the mainline. That's kind of the mainline movie that's that the Minion spin-off. I can't recall right now, but yeah, that animation studio. They did this one as well. It looks good. I think the budget's gonna be around the same as the Minion movies, probably around 80 million or so, right? It's voiced by Benedict Cumberbatch, who voiced the Grinch, and then Rashida Jones is here. Angela Lansbury is doing the voices as well, among others. So you can't go wrong with a classic with the Grinch, right? Except that it's animated. So I think it could probably open to about 30 million or so. All right, so that's it for this podcast. Tune in next week to see how I did. Until then, take care. Bye bye.